with Cathy. This is the last in our spring series of the show, and I thought we would do something that wasn't in the book, Annie's book. We've been following a couple of her books over the last 2 seasons, but I've been kind of noticing these remade suitcases. And they're old hard suitcases, the hardcover suitcases that we all seem to have stuck in an attic somewhere. But it's a great idea if we can repurpose them, because honestly, what good are they doing sitting in the attic? This is a suitcase with a story. This was my great-grandmother's suitcase. It has her initials on it. I think everybody in my family used this suitcase. It was the suitcase when I was a kid. If you were going somewhere for longer than overnight, you packed the suitcase. And so it was a very useful suitcase. It still is. It's in great shape on the inside, but the outside is quite bashed up. And honestly, we don't use suitcases like this anymore. If we took this on the plane, it would be so heavy we'd be already over our weight allowance and we haven't put our toothbrush in it yet. But it makes a great table. So we're going to paint this suitcase today, and we're going to paint it into something that is contemporary colors, but in keeping with the look of the suitcase. And I don't have a picture to show you of what we're trying to do because I don't have one. It's kind of up here. We're going to start by preserving the one thing on the suitcase that makes it unique to every other, and that is my grandmother's initials, great-grandmother's initials. She was Elizabeth Reed. She even has Elizabeth here in the name, and we're just going to cover this and cover this little medallion so that years from now when we look at it, we can still tell the story of whose suitcase it is. The easiest way to do that is with a little piece of cardboard. Now, I want to make it an oval, and you can get I just need to make sure I've got it big enough. I'm going to take it just a little bit more. I'm going to trim down a square piece. You can get complicated with your painter's tape and try and make the painter's tape an oval, but the easiest way is to make it a rectangle and then cut it into an oval. So I've got my painter's tape, and I'm going to fold it in half against the tape just so I get a perfect cut, and I'm just going to cut this out into an oval, and then I'll open it up trim it out to be a little bit smaller than what I need it to be, and put a piece of painter's tape on it. Now, it's a little bit, just so that I can trim around the oval with the painter's tape and have a little bit of tape to stick. The cardboard just gives it a little bit more rigidity, gives me something to press down. I'll center it, so I've got a little oval of painter's tape, and we'll just center that right on here, push it all down. And there we go. And for the little piece here, I'm going to put that on. I need a little bigger piece. Just put it down. I just rub it to get the outline. Lift it back off, but I can see the outline and trim it off. There we go. There. And I can always go back and touch that up a little bit with paint when I'm done. I'm not going to worry about whether I get paint on here because I I could tape all of this, but I can also just take a sharp razor and scrape it off or a wet cloth. And it's not perfect anyway. I will give it a good clean when I finish everything. But now my suitcase is ready to paint. I gave this suitcase a good wash last night to get maybe what could be years of traveling grime off it. I don't know, but certainly years of basement grime off it. And this is the base, the bottom. This is the part we always slide onto everything when we're unpacking our suitcases. So we'll start here. We're going to use Louis Blue. And I think Louis Blue will cover quite nicely with one coat. My trim is going to be a different color. And it has that kind of, I don't know, alligator skin look to it that the old suitcases had. I think these suitcases lasted so long because they weren't vinyl. The next suitcases that came along in the 70s were soft vinyl and really quite ugly. These ones had character. So I have to make sure, I mean, again, I'm using a round brush. I'm using my medium brush this time because I need to make sure I get into all of the texture that made up the way they finished these suitcases. I even have her little makeup case, and I use that as a display sometimes at the store. But it was kind of funny when you think about how everybody used to travel. Everything had its little, every bag had its purpose. So I'm taking my brush and I'm just kind of working it into below. This is a leather. It would have been to protect and cover the edges of the finish of the suitcase. So I'm just using my brush to work into the stitches just below that because I'm going to use a different color there. I don't need to cover it. But it covers very well. Paints nicely and easily. I chose the Louis Blue because I'm not sure which room it's going to go in, but whatever room it goes in, I think I have blue in every single room. I'm going to go around here and paint the side. Same thing, just going to go in close to that leather stitching. Leather binding, but not on it. I love these round brushes because you can do that. Just edge the paint in without going too far. And here's another example of where I might have to just wipe it off afterwards. Take my finger and clean some of it off. Work the paint in all the way down. If you go on Pinterest or any of the sites and you look up painted suitcases, you'll see all kinds of ideas for things you can do with them. You can make them look very vintage, the old look, or you can create your own look. Sometimes you can just clean them up and, oops, if they're in good shape. I'm just going to go down here and get into all of this little space. There you go. And around to the front. Now this is where it needed a good cleaning because it had a label on it at some point. They used to travel by train. My great-grandmother lived in Montreal, lived in Truro, and the rest of her family, a lot of her son was in Montreal. So she would take the train from Truro to Montreal. And I think they sometimes had big labels if they didn't have their luggage with them. They had labels that went into luggage compartment so I could figure out whose was whose. So we'll just finish this up and we'll put it to dry and we'll come back and work on the trim. So we had a little technical blip, and for once it wasn't my fault, which always really makes me happy because usually it's something I've done. And so we may have missed the part on how we set this up to decide where our stripes are going. So just do a little recap. I measured the front of the suitcase. It's 20 inches. And I wanted to divide it into equal stripes. So I also wanted to include my handles. This is going to be painted off-white. So I started with the center. I have two little now painted rivets right here, which is my center point. And I measured out, and then I made each of my stripes 1.5 inches long. So what I did was, it's under the tape now, but I took this and I made a little line so that I had even lines here going across, 1.5 inches with 1.5 inches in between, and then another 1.5 inch stripe. There's no right or wrong way to do this. This is purely what makes you happy. But whatever you do at the front, do at the back. So I did the same measurements, made my lines, and made just little lines, just little ticks, and then I stretched my tape out between the lines so that we know that we have it even across the suitcase. So I've done the top of the suitcase with one coat now in old white over my Louis blue, and I'm doing it this way because it's much easier to do all of one half of the suitcase and then flip it over and do the other half, and then I'll have the lines to guide me anyway. So, but I do feel like we're going to need a second coat on this. We're just going to move right into that. We're going to put a second coat. We're going to go all along the edge of the suitcase binding. We're going to go along and do the same thing using the flat brush and working with the length, of the painter's tape, because if I try to go this way, I'm going to force paint into the underneath of the painter's tape, and I don't want it there. And then I think I might add another stripe. I've been playing with colors. I'd like this to be able to fit into a number of rooms. So when I finish all of my stripes, I always play with my samples. I painted little, these are just little shims, and I painted these for the last season show because I found it so much easier to work with little bits of color to decide if they were going to work. So these are the two I've started with, but I think it might need a little pop of color. So I think I'm going to do, and I'm just going to show you, this will be my blue. I think I'm going to do just a little red stripe against my ivory, and I'm debating whether I'm going to do a little Aubusson blue. I love the Emperor Silk. If I do these, I think I would do them quite thin, like 1/4 inch stripes. And we'll just see, whoops, 1/4 inch stripes. So with the Louis blue, and I'm not sure if I will do them all the way along, but whatever I'm going to do, it's going to make this old suitcase into something new. I'll put legs on it, and I invite you to come and see the finished project at the store. We will be doing our last wrap up of this series at the store, and some of the projects will be there, and I'm going to leave them there so you can come in and actually see them. Ask us questions. I hope you enjoyed the series. It's certainly been a lot of fun putting it together this year, and once again I found all kinds of old things that we've made new and ours for the house, and we invite you to come in and discuss how you can do the same thing for your house. The found things. Don't forget spring cleanup's coming, and they'll be finding things by the side of the road. And come in and discuss your paint projects, discuss how to do things, take a course with us, and just share your enthusiasm for this wonderful chalk paint by Annie Sloan. Thank you very much for joining me this season.